There's nothing like that first cup of coffee in the morning.
Oh, absolutely. Good morning, America.
You're just like, thank you, Lord,
Coffee.
for this nectar from the heavens.
Remember, Cease, remember how Richard Pryor was going to take over the world in Superman 3? Or no, he helps them fight the people that were going to take over the world.
Yes, right.
By cornering the coffee market.
That's how you do it.
If you could corner the coffee market, you could take over the world.
You could. Houston means that I'm a one day closer to you. Okay, let's go on in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Deshaun Watson is out for the preseason opener. Shocker with the Houston Texans and Bloom. Yeah. Tyrod Taylor. Davis Mills is struggling. What are they going to do with Deshaun Watson?
Good question. I don't know. I really don't know. This is a situation where how do we project this offense? Now, we've gotten unequivocal proclamations that Deshaun Watson is not going to play a down again for the Texans.
Ever
again. But, and this is John McClain, who is the venerable beat writer, or not really beat writer. Now he's just kind of the voice or the pundit of the Texans coverage. And he said, again, Watson, this was just this week, Watson won't play. Why did he feel the need to say that? Because we're seeing reports that the Texans are going to try to bring him into the fold, try to make him their starting quarterback again. And let's just pare down the possibilities, okay? Will he get traded before the season? Nick Caserio is insane if he does that. No other GM, they would be insane if they gave full value for him. While we don't know his legal status, while we don't know his status with the league. Cross that one out. Is Watson going to get on the commissioner's exempt list? Well, it hasn't happened yet. Now, that's maybe the best thing for everybody, right? Watson gets paid. The Texans get to have the first overall pick next year, probably. Because that's the other thing, right? Do the Texans want Watson to play for them this year? Even though they have to pay him, do they want him to play? Is that good for the team? I guess they were still picking pretty high.
What is their intent with this whole situation? Why make him show up anyway? Like, I mean, you were talking about making the Shield look bad. The Texans are making the Shield look bad. Like, dude, what is your point? Right? We're going to play him safety. You're going to play scout team today. Like, what are you doing?
Right. The whole thing lacks clarity. And it's hard to say, what does Watson have at his disposal if he doesn't want to play for them and they say, no, you have to show up and play. Again, if he's willing to show up to camp to avoid $50,000 a day fines, the Texans have a lot bigger financial incentive to hold over him during the season. They could even get into legal proceedings for breach of contract and try to take some of the guaranteed money back and things like that if he decides to not play. I don't know. What I do think is this, where people are fixing it as 0% that Watson will play, and certainly his ADP in fantasy drafts indicates that, it's not 0%. Is it 0.0001%? Is it 0.1%? Is it 1%? Is it 10%? It's a day-to-day changing thing.
Right.
And it's based on human psychology, which is totally unpredictable. Totally unpredictable. So I don't know. No, I'm not going to make a hard turn in my fantasy drafts and make sure I get Brandon Cooks because, Brandon Cooks all of a sudden becomes a value. Although Brandon Cooks, I'm skipping ahead here. But it's all intertwined. Every preseason watch list episode we do sees it's all intertwined. It's the nature of football. So certainly in your best ball leagues where all the risk is basically wiped off the table anyway, be taking Deshaun Watson late in your drafts. Maybe even do some team builds in best ball where you're not necessarily depending on Watson. Because remember, you can win your best ball league with a quarterback that's just getting you 15 or 20 points a game if you hit elsewhere. So you can take like Derek Carr and Ben Roethlisberger and Deshaun Watson late in your draft. You're going to be fine. And if Watson plays, you're going to be more than fine. Superflex leagues, another format where, you're going to take Watson late and see what happens. Because it's a changing, fluid, mercurial situation. It's unprecedented. That's the thing. When it comes down to this, especially when we're talking about the Texans, because that's the other thing. Let's just say this is one part of a stunning collapse And when I say stunning, what I mean is we all watched the Bill O'Brien thing, and we all saw how poor of a decision it was for O'Brien to become the GM. And we all saw how O'Brien showed how poor of a decision it was to give him that imperial power over the franchise. But never could we have projected that this franchise would end up in ashes, basically. It's a total disintegration. It's marked by how many free agents did they sign this offseason, Cease? 30? 40? I don't even know.
53.
Right? I mean, maybe the whole roster, right? How many of the players on this team, even by the end of the season, are going to be players from the O'Brien regime? I have no idea. This is stunning. And again, with the cupboard bare because of the trade for Laramie Tunsil. So obviously, if Watson plays, we become more interested in everyone in this offense. If Watson doesn't play, which is still the most likely outcome, now, at any point, that could flip, Cease. At any point, Adam Schefter, Rappaport could say, Deshaun Watson has decided to play for the Texans this year. Like, it might be happening while we're recording right now. And then all of a sudden, this whole thing flips. But until that happens, the most likely outcome is Watson doesn't play. And then you're looking at Davis Mills. Oof.
Who is struggling mightily. Can't stay healthy. What did he start? Like 11 games in college?
Right. He was a long-term project. I get taking Davis Mills, if you're the Texans, to start him in 2022 or 2023.
Yeah, 23. Put a 3 on that. Put a 9er on that.
You're going to break him. You're going to break him by putting him out there before he's ready. So it's Tyrod Taylor. Now, Tyrod Taylor has some fantasy value. In super flex leagues, especially, hey, what's Tyrod Taylor look like when he's playing for a team that's playing from behind? I don't know. As long as your league doesn't punish turnovers too much, it could be fun. He runs, and he's going to be a competitor. So there's something here with Tyrod Taylor. I don't know what. Nothing with Davis Mills, and I don't know about Deshaun Watson. And Cease, when it comes right down to it, we have never had anything remotely like this happen in the NFL before, or any sport. I have no idea what to even compare this to, Cease. I can't even come up with some over-contrived analogy or metaphor for this, which is why it's so difficult to predict what's going to happen next.
It's like a staring contest out of spite, but then they start like falling for each other again.
I don't know. Or just weird. We have to stay together because no one else will take us.
Right.
You know?
It's weird. It's totally weird. And Jeff Driscoll's awful. Davis Mills is regularly terrible. Like Tyrod Taylor's interesting. And then to the running back situation, I sent a memo to all of my Texans beat writer friends because there was a report from The Athletic, who does fine work, and whoever it was, saying like Philip Lindsay and Mark Ingram might not make the team because they don't play special teams. I was like, well, it ain't going to be Philip Lindsay. Sorry. As a matter of fact, how can I say this, Bloom? And I will tell you off the air who said it. There are people in the building that think Philip Lindsay is going to be the starter. Now, you mentioned it, playing from behind. Philip Lindsay can't catch. Sorry. So playing from behind, does that equal more Philip Lindsay? No. David Johnson is there. David Johnson, a well-rounded back. Philip Lindsay, he's like the Terminator. He doesn't stop. He just keeps going. We can't stop him. Like, okay, so we're going to watch this, throwing Ingram, throwing Rex Burkhead. We kind of have to talk about this cluster of running back. But I guess I will finalize and emphasize this, Bloom. While I anticipate David Johnson as the starter, it would not surprise me if Philip Lindsay won the starting job and then have a limited role on 2 downs.
Right. So what do we have here? Lindsay's probably the best runner. Johnson's the best receiver out of the backfield, but Lindsay's not a bad receiver out of the backfield. He's not as he's not as useless in the passing game as his Denver usage would make you think. He was a great pass catcher back at Colorado, as you've reminded us many times, Cease. And then you have Mark Ingram. So what do you have when you have a committee backfield? Because no matter how we cut this up, it's a committee backfield.
Yeah.
What do you have when you have a committee backfield on the 32nd best team in the league? You got nothing for fantasy. You got nothing. I'd rather have, Samaje Perine. I'd rather have Xavier Jones. I'd rather have somebody that I can say, I can envision a scenario where I'm going to feel confident playing this player, even if it's an unlikely scenario. Because the most unlikely scenario here, sure, David Johnson or Lindsay could get hurt, there's upside for the other if that happens. But it's still the Texans. David Johnson was the clear lead back last year. Maybe not clear lead back, but he didn't have Phillip Lindsay to deal with. And it was only at the very end of the year with Deshaun Watson in the offense that David Johnson encouraged us to play him in our fantasy leagues. So I'm just staying away. And it's just going to be a common theme here as we go through the Texans. And really, again, this is kind of, a funeral for this. I feel bad for Rivers McCown. I always think of Rivers McCown, who's one of the best, one of the most unheralded and best football writers out there, Rivers McCown. And people who've really given their heart over the Texans, the Oilers, love you blue. The Houston folks love the Oilers.
Steph Stradley, right?
They loved the Oilers. I mean, loved that team. So when they got a chance to have another team, they were going to put their heart with that team. And there's been a few moments here and there, and there's signature players like J.J. Watt, who's now in Arizona. And now this is just terrible. See, this feels worse than how I have felt for the Browns fans or the Lions fans. And for fantasy, again, we're salting the earth, and maybe something will grow in a year or two.
Yeah, because, oh boy, running back situation, wide receivers are a little bit different. You want to talk about Buddy Howell at all? It is preseason watch list.
Special teamer. I mean, he's going to hang around because he can play special teams. There he goes.
There's your back that can play special teams. I feel like we should just give a section to Brandon Cooks just because he's there and he's the final one standing. So here you go. Brandon Cooks, hot talk, and then we'll get to the rest of the wide receivers.
And Cook's 8th round pick or so. He's a professional. It's funny. He's changed teams a lot, but usually ends up with a good quarterback. Now he's not changing teams, and he's going to end up with a bad quarterback. How bad is that going to be? Well, there's such a thing as targets by default. Maybe because this team's playing from behind, he can have value, and I can't pull out of my brain database a similar situation, but I know there have been similar situations where a good number one receiver on a bad team with a bad quarterback has still had fantasy value. Now, again, in the 8th round of my draft, I'm probably thinking, maybe it's a little bit early in some drafts, but I'm still thinking Darnell Mooney or McCole Hardman or Elijah Moore. I want some excitement. Brandon Cooks is a pick you make almost out of resignation. Well, he's going to get the targets. I'm just resigned to the fact that he's going to have that value. But that's just not how I roll with my fantasy team. And with Cooks, another challenge, he continues to overcome them. He's really been he's the Forrest Gump of all of these strange moves for franchises or franchises showing what they're about, whether it's New Orleans, New England, the Rams, and now the Texans.
Must have had me about 14 Dr. Peppers.
Yeah.
All right, Hank asking, who's the wide receiver too? Is it Nico Collins? Well, we'll talk about Nico and the big-bodied rookie from Michigan. So I'm down at the Senior Bowl. There's your drink. And, knows how to use his frame. We'll say that. Maybe not as explosive as you'd want him to be. Can play vertically, which is good in terms of going up and getting it above the rim. But Chris Conley is there. So Chris Conley, Nico Collins, the move for Anthony Miller, right? We got to kind of jumble this next group up.
So again, theoretical value here because it's a team playing from behind that will have to pass a lot. So there's theoretical value here for the number 2 receiver. It's probably going to be Nico Collins. And with Nico Collins and Donovan Peoples-Jones, we can tell a consistent story, right?
The same guy.
Right. Athletic wonder. Poor quarterback play at Michigan conceals their game. The measurables at draft time remind the NFL just what these guys are capable of. And then when they get on the field, you see what they're capable of. So Collins, especially in your dynasty leagues, there's a future there for sure, and maybe a present. I'm not necessarily taking him as my 20th round pick. Could be an early season waiver wire watch list. Garbage time. I can imagine Nico Collins having some garbage time. Love. And then Anthony Miller. With Randall Cobb back in Green Bay, Miller makes a lot of sense in the slot. Miller's problem has never been that he can't play. Miller can play. Miller's just a headache. He's just a pain. And the Texans still gave up a 5th round pick for him. And that's a pretty decent pick when you're the Texans. It's going to be an early 5th round pick, right? So he's got usage too. Again, maybe he and Tyrod Taylor hook up as just that high percentage. Remember, Tyrod Taylor, what's drilled into his brain is the prime directive, don't turn the ball over. 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 So 50-50 balls to Nico Collins, while they could be pretty, is he going to lean on that? No. Brandon Cooks should probably have a safety over the top, etc. No, but maybe it's Anthony Miller.
Easy drag route to Anthony Miller sounds good.
So we'll watch this. But again, see, just by principle, it just feels like nothing good can grow here.
Nothing good. It is preseason watch list, so when we look down the roster, it's always interesting to see a guy like Isaiah Coulter.
Yeah.
Chris Moore, I've always liked the ball tracking ability anyway. Taywan Taylor's still kicking into the league. So, preseason watch list, Bloom. What, Andre Roberts? Remember when we talk about him? And, well, here's your time to talk about Kiki
Cutie. If Anthony Miller's a pain in Houston, then Kiki Cutie's the guy that gets the cheap, easy drag routes, right?
Yeah.
Just keep it in mind. Again, Kiki Cutie, the problem is not that he can't play. That's never been the problem with Cutie. Coulter, another athletic outside receiver. He was a small school guy, part of that Rhode Island duo. Took him in the fifth round. Right. Who's with the Cowboys, right? So he's now, though, with the addition of Collins, he's just trying to make the team, even with some. How many wide receivers they even have on the roster? See, such a ridiculous number. Conley, by the way, just going back to Conley's just going to be inconvenient. He's not going to have fantasy value of his own, but because at least he has experience, he is going to get to play and maybe take the edge off of whatever upside there is for these other receivers. And and it doesn't get prettier when we turn the page to the tight ends.
No, tight ends. And here's the thing, Bloom, like this whole situation. I like Jordan Akins. I like Kahale Warring. Hell, I like Brevin Jordan. Like, they're all interesting to me. Not as like go out and grab them and start them every week, obviously, but just interesting developmental prospects. And this is such a shut your mouth show.
Yeah.
YouTube just demonetized this right there. It was like, you almost said it.
Close enough.
It was good enough. It was good enough. Strike you down. But yeah, the shut your mouth show that this team is like, Akins, Warring, Jordan, whatever. None of it's going to matter. Who's going to develop in this? You can't grow when it's, I know a rose can grow from concrete. Tupac said that.
Right.
But like, seriously, like what's going to grow here in terms of developmental tight ends?
Yeah, roses can grow from concrete, but I'm not going to put my garden on concrete. I'm going to plant my garden in dirt. Akins got some speed. I can remember him showing roughly the same speed as Traquan Smith at times when they were together in college. But he's had plenty of chances if he was going to break out. Kahale Warring, water polo, right? Just saw some water polo action in the Olympics. He can't stay healthy. He's a great athletic conversion project in a way, but it hasn't worked out yet. Brevin Jordan, if he had landed on a different team, moved tight end, receiving tight end on a different team, we'd have interest. And maybe I'm burying the lead here because if we say there's nothing in this team's future except for maybe Nico Collins, then maybe Brevin Jordan a year or two down the line in dynasty leagues, depending on where this team ends up at quarterback, could be something. But for this year, this is one where we could queue up the Texans tight end section of the preseason watch list for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's always the same story. The names change, but it's always the same story. They have a bunch of Pharaoh Brown. They have a bunch of athletic guys. There's some promise there when it was with Deshaun Watson. Now the only promise is that none of these guys are going to matter in fantasy leagues.
I promise not to draft any Texans. How about that?
Yeah.
Woo! Are you tired of the same old fantasy contest? Think you got what it takes to flex on the competition and win this season's hottest fantasy football contest? Well, $100 can get you as much as it used to in fantasy football. But what if I told you for a $100 entry, you could win a grand prize of $225,000 and a VIP trip for 2 to the Super Bowl and tons of other weekly prizes? It's FanUp's Flex Frenzy season-long contest. It's a perfect contest for you or any fan. That's right. FanUp is crowning their first ever MVF, Most Valuable Fan, this season. Will it be you? Sign up starts this week and ends Thursday, September 9th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Join an awesome community of over 50,000 fantasy and esports fans who love to compete against each other and team up as friends for the ultimate prizes and, of course, the bragging rights. Download the app everyone is talking about, FanUp, on the App Store for Apple. Must be 18 years or older to play. Restrictions apply per state. FanUp and just be fans. Well, we're fans of the Indianapolis Colts as we wrap up the Houston Texans, Bloom, in the preseason watch list. It is 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right on this show. The injury bug. She is a wicked mistress. When will she let the Indianapolis Colts out of her clutches? We'll discuss next.
Give me like 10 seconds.
Okay. 10, I'm counting down.
9, 8,
7, 6, 5, 4, freaking blah, blah, 2, 1. Hello, is it me you're looking for? I was just singing Lionel Richie.
Oh, which one? Which one?
Hello.
Is it me you're looking for?
Yeah, Lionel played John Lynch's Hall of Fame party.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, he was a headliner at ACL a few years back. I don't know how many years back. And a lot of people were saying that was the best set. People who weren't Commodores fans, people who weren't Lionel Richie fans were saying that was the best set.
That's how you know he's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And easy like Sunday morning. I mean, that's my karaoke song, baby. Why would anybody want to put chains on me?
It was funny because, of course, Nick went to all the Hall of Fame stuff, and he's like, Cecil, it was Lionel Richie, Cecil.
Woo.
Yeah.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good to have friends. All right, here we go.
Sail on. Good times never felt so good.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay, Colts talk in 3, 2, 1. Where do we begin with all these injuries with the Colts? I know it's the preseason watch list, Bloom, so we're going to start with quarterbacks, and we're going to start with an injured Carson Wentz. We'll talk about the backups, but let's talk about him and when he'll be back and what he can do.
Woof. This is quite a team to dissect right now. So this was a team that had new hope, right? And by the way, let's put it out there. Phillip Rivers has said, hey, maybe I'll come back later in the season. Maybe I'll still play. I don't know. So, the Rivers gave them, I think, just a great Phillip Rivers performance that we'll remember fondly, and they turned the page by making a trade for Carson Wentz, which makes sense because Frank Reich was one of the key point men when Carson Wentz was good. But we also have this team replacing their left tackle, Anthony Costanzo, an all-time great. Where do we go from here? Carson Wentz has to have a foot surgery, 5 to 12 weeks. In a week or two, if we could record this in a week or two, we'd have a better picture. He's probably going to miss some regular season games.
I'm glad we didn't record it before then.
Yeah, right.
I'm always worried about that with preseason watch lists, and we've started a little bit later this year, which I think has been advantageous, Bloom. That's an off-air conversation, but I imagine doing this in July like we used to. I can't wait to see Carson Wentz. Nope, not till October.
So this obviously ripples through the whole team. Wentz, again, you're looking at him as a quarterback 3 in Superflex 2 QB leagues. In one quarterback league, I don't even know why you draft him. If we get some confirmation in the next week or two that, hey, there's a 50-50 chance he'll play week 1 and at most he'll miss 1 game or 2 games, maybe he becomes your last round pick to see what happens. Because, of course, Carson Wentz, when he's good, is somebody who can elevate an offense. He has some running ability, and he has ability to make plays outside of structure. His ability to play inside of structure, his process has not always been his strong suit. But again, we're counting on Frank Reich to help with that. What if it's not Carson Wentz? Well, that's where it gets scary, and that's why you back off of Jonathan Taylor unless he falls to the second round. That's why you're backing off of all of these receivers. That's why you're backing off of this offense. It's Jacob Eason, but as we're recording today, Cecil, Sam Ehlinger getting some first-team snaps in practice.
Woohoo! Yeah. Okay, you guys have some interesting names and all different games. Ehlinger, more of a dual threat. Eason,
a gamer,
more of a stone-footed pocket passer with a big arm and say it, don't spray it accuracy. So what do you want? Well, from a fantasy perspective, and we'll get to the injuries on the line, we'll get to the running back situation, Bloom. But for a fantasy perspective, you want the guy that can run. A running quarterback, even as limited as a passer as Sam Ehlinger is, a running quarterback can be quite beneficial for you.
Yeah, now we're getting to the point where in those super flex leagues, maybe you're taking Ellinger as your late round
and not feeling
quarterback
crazy about it.
Yeah, he's a gamer, and it makes sense. Because there is the defense of this team, and Eric Stoner is on my mind when I think about this. That are the Colts a good defense? Really? I don't know if they're a good defense. They're a defense. There's the kind of defense, and offenses are like this 2Cs. I don't know what. It's kind of the girl with the curl, I think. When they're good, they're very, very good. And when they're bad, they're very, very bad. Where there's defenses, there's offenses. If they're playing really poor opponents, they can look great. They can look like world beaters. But if they have to play a tough opponent, all of a sudden they're limited. Very limited. Lamar Jackson in the Ravens offense at times. So is the Colts defense a shutdown defense? I don't know. Against bad quarterbacks, against bad offenses, sure. But the point is, they do believe in their defense. And that means they want to keep games close. And Ellinger makes a lot more sense as that classic gamer who doesn't really have tools, but will leave everything out on the field in service of his team over Eason, who's kind of that Tom Savage prospect, the big cannon arm, and then we'll see about the rest. So that affects Ellinger. And also, I mean, I don't know. Either way, Cease, I'm not starting any Indianapolis Colt except for Jonathan Taylor while Carson Wentz is on the bench. It's just not happening. By the way, also, we're watching Ryan Kelly, their star center, with an elbow injury. Quentin Nelson, he's going to be on the field. See, so I can't even think of what would keep Quentin Nelson off the field. There could be
abduction.
Right, there could be mushroom clouds, and he would just be there with his hand in the ground waiting for everyone else to show up so he can play some football. So I think that Nelson's going to be okay. Eric Fisher, their left tackle, may not return until October, coming back from an Achilles tear. So that's the other thing. The other thing that we got to mention here is the schedule. They start out with Seattle and then get the Rams, Tennessee, Miami, and Baltimore.
So they're 1-5?
Right. 0-5, 1-4 through that stretch. And then you start getting into the logistics. So if Carson Wentz's recovery goes so that it's on the 12 weekend and not the 5 weekend, now, remember, 70% of the snaps that make the playoffs, the second round pick they're sending to the Eagles becomes a first round pick, or 75% of the snaps. And teams will play games with this stuff. And if they start 1-4 and say Tennessee, so by the way, let's look at Tennessee. Tennessee starts Arizona, Seattle, Indy, Jets, Jacksonville. Ooh.
So they're like 4-1.
Right. So at that point, if you're Chris Ballard, and not that Chris Ballard's going to get into the kitchen and stick his fingers in this stuff, but it sure would make a lot of sense at that point if you run out the scenarios to say, well, let's be really conservative with Wentz coming back so he doesn't hit the 70%, just in case we do make the playoffs with him. So I think all these things factor into just a not very exciting September for this offense. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Wentz makes a triumphant return and we actually get to see what he can do with his mind, body, and soul rehabilitated under Frank Reich. But where this all intersects, Cease, because I just released one article yesterday, the All Rollies team. Hey, Joe, right? The players that you're relieved that someone else took, and maybe number one on that list, if it's not Saquon Barkley, and they're both going around the same point in the draft, Jonathan Taylor. What do you do with Jonathan Taylor right now? Like I said, you just hope someone else takes him so you don't have to agonize about him when you're on the clock.
Yeah, and Jonathan Taylor, who has a ton of talent, which we know, also has question marks that people seem uncomfortable to talk about because Nyheim Hines isn't going to do nothing. Right. They're going to use Nyheim Hines. They should use Nyheim Hines. Marlon Mack, if he's back, might get some when Taylor needs a breather, right? So there's committee elements to this backfield, and maybe that's just kind of the modern state of the running back position, Bloom, where you have a lead back like Jonathan Taylor, but he's also going to get a little, little stuff chipped away by guys like Mack or guys like Hines.
Yeah, that's the problem, especially Mack, because Hines maybe is going to have the dedicated role that he had last year. Some of that's Philip Rivers, some of that's Nick Sirianni. There'll still be a role for Nyheim Hines. He's a good player. You use your good players. Maybe not to the same extent as last year, but Marlon Mack is the issue here because continue to watch this as he comes back from an Achilles. And again, we have that Achilles list of running backs. Watch Dante Foreman in Atlanta. Kenny Nwangwu, who Matt Waldman pointed out has already had an Achilles tear, who's still running like 4.4s. Okay. Maybe Mack is going to force us to change that conventional wisdom on running backs that when they have an Achilles, they can come all the way back. But when we're talking about your second round pick, and see, so you brought this up first, and I brought this up, and I'm going to give you credit that the second round is as important as the first round this year. And Jonathan Taylor's figuring into that picture. I'm making figure and picture into one word. Fixturing.
YouTube just struck us down for that.
I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound good.
It does not sound good. You can't talk about that.
So with Jonathan Taylor, if Marlon Mack is taking 4, 5, 6 touches away, that can be the difference between Jonathan Taylor being a player that you're comfortable leaving in as an upside running back to, and a player that frustrates you and makes you wonder at some point if you're going to bench him. The other thing to remember with Jonathan Taylor, and this is brought up a lot with David Montgomery, Taylor's big games last year mostly were against bad defenses. So his breakout might be one of those false breakouts, or at least it's a breakout with a condition. So again, with that early schedule, we're going to find out pretty quickly what he can do. So there's just a lot of questions about Jonathan Taylor. It's the same as Barkley, right? You're basically betting on the talent. You're betting on the talent to overcome all of the other surroundings that can be obstacles, that can be drags on his value. That just doesn't sound attractive. I don't want to take players in the first and second round that are rowing into a headwind. I want that tailwind, man. I want them getting the things around them to push them to even higher heights.
Right. You want a little bonus, right? You want a little extra, a little lanyap, as my man Brandon Soakley would say, like just a little extra, and you're not really going to get that with Taylor. Now, behind the three that we've talked about, Jordan Wilkins has plenty of talent. Wilkins could start somewhere, I'm going to watch Benny LeMay, right? It is preseason watch list. Love the Charlotte back. Is short and stout. So, yeah, some names to keep an eye on, and they have a depth that a lot of teams would envy at the running back position.
And maybe they are envying Jordan Wilkins. And Jordan Wilkins is right there seats with Royce Freeman as your player that may not have a use for the current team he's on.
Why aren't the Dolphins adding Jordan Wilkins?
We'll see. Maybe they will. Teams are getting a good look at what they have in their backfields. Maybe the Rams. These are teams that are going to be evaluating what they have and deciding whether to add somebody, because Jordan Wilkins is good enough to play in the NFL. Jordan Wilkins, think Justin Jackson, the Chargers. When he gets the ball, he can play. He doesn't always stay on the field. He gets banged up a lot. But there are teams that can use Jordan Wilkins, even if the Colts can't.
Even if the Colts can't, I'll tell you what you can do. Download the Fan Up app in the App Store. Make sure to check out Fan Up. Fan Up's Flex Frenzy season-long contest is the perfect contest for you or any fan. It's super easy, fun, quick, and there's no boring salary caps or drafts. The Flex contest combines the best of redraft and best ball, allowing you to just be fans. Check it out. Fan Up. Sign up start this week and end Thursday, September 9th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Fan Up is crowning their first ever MVF Most Valuable Fan this season. Will it be you? Join an awesome community of over 50,000 fantasy and esports fans who love to compete against each other and team up as friends for the ultimate prizes and bragging rights. Download the app everyone is talking about. It's Fan Up on the App Store. Must be 18. Restrictions apply per state. Fan Up and just be fans. Well, just be fans of T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman, and Paris Campbell, all with 3 different talking points, Bloom. Hilton, how long he can stay on. Pittman, will he really flourish? The one thing with Pittman that's frustrating for me, Bloom, is you see the talent. You see the natural instincts for catching the ball. You see the size and how he can use it. And then sometimes they get out-muscled by smaller DBs. And you're like, Pittman, you can do more. You could dominate. He could really dominate. He could be one of the most exciting wide receivers in football if it clicks and hits for Pittman and then Paris Campbell with that speed, this trio, and then if Sam Ehlinger's the quarterback, okay, what does that mean? Aspirational throws to Pittman? What's going on here?
Well, that's the thing. And we're looking for good starts. These are all cheap. These guys are all cheap. That's the good news. But remember, Carson Wentz likes to throw to the tight end. Frank Reich likes to scheme to the tight end. You're going to have Nyheim Hines. When this team's game scripts are on target, they're going to want to run a lot. They're going to want to use, they would probably want to get Mack to 7-10 carries and Taylor to 20-plus carries. What's that going to leave? In best ball leagues, I'm okay with the Colts receivers. In leagues where you have to commit to someone in your starting lineup, it feels not good. Even with Carson Wentz, it was going to be a tangle to figure out. Pittman is the one who should go first because he's the ascendant talent basically a first-round pick, early second-round pick. We like him as that kind of receiver. He's not Mike Evans, okay? He's not necessarily going to have that kind of high wire act, that kind of speed, but he's that big outside receiver. He's maybe even a little better route runner than Evans, even though he's not going to make those individual circus catches, dominant plays, but he can be the alpha. But I don't know what the alpha is going to be worth when you have T.Y. Hilton, who's been the alpha for this team forever. They brought him back at about $8 million. They're going to use him. T.Y. Hilton was excited. And T.Y. Hilton, there was a case to make. I was taking a lot of T.Y. Hilton earlier in the offseason because he was excited that with Wentz, the deep pass would be back. That wasn't something Phillip Rivers was doing very much last year. And you could argue, by the way, that Hilton came on late in the season, that there's still something there. And the fact they gave him $8 million. I mean, the team that is watching him every day in the house says he's still worth this to us. So there's potentially something there. But again, when am I going to feel comfortable playing T.Y. Hilton? I barely felt comfortable playing him until December last year. When's that going to happen this year? Especially if Pittman's role is growing. And then there's Paris Campbell. Paris Campbell has the highest ceiling of anybody in this group right now. I mean, Paris Campbell hopes he can become what T.Y. Hilton was at his peak. And maybe T.Y. Hilton's closer to his peak.
He was drafted essentially to replace Hilton.
Right.
Hasn't happened.
Because he can't stay healthy. But here's the thing about Campbell. And remember this, folks. Don't write players off until we see affirmatively that they cannot play. And we've seen just the opposite with Campbell. He has camps that captivate onlookers. The little bit he's been on the field, especially last year, the little bit he was on the field, he reminded me of, say, Calvin Ridley. Somebody who can play very fast and very under control. And remember, we have the Ohio State thing going on here, where I'm going to see what this does with Jacksonville, where you have that Ohio State offense that really doesn't use the receivers nearly to the extent they can, right? Curtis Samuel, Michael Thomas. These receivers coming out of Ohio State, they get to the pros and they're used in a pro-style offense, and we say, wow, they can do a lot more than what they did at Ohio State. So if there's a real breakout player, I think it's Campbell. I have a lot of Campbell. Again, Wentz extending the play. What do we remember for Wentz in his great moments with Philly? 3rd and 14 got him right where they want him because he will extend the play. He'll make aspirational throws. He'll make things happen. To me, that's Campbell on the other end of those throws if he can stay healthy, knock on wood. So if all three of these guys are on the field, now you have, maybe they're taking turns. Again, for best ball, there's something here. But week to week, when you have to predict this, when the tight ends are going to play a role, when the running back Hines is going to play a role, when this team wants to be really balanced offense, it's very difficult. And see, they have one of the better number 4 receivers in the league too.
Yeah, number 4 in your hearts, or number 1 in your hearts. Zach Pascal out there making plays. There's been a drumbeat about him, boom, during camp here for the Colts. Mike Strawn, and that's the way you pronounce it, Strawn?
Strawn, yeah.
Strawn. Oh, speaking of Strawn, you talk about the speed, the nose for the end zone. You're coming from Charlotte, baby. You're going to play if you're going to come from Charlotte, making the NFL. But Pascal, I mean, he could be a starter somewhere else, right? He's their Tim Patrick, basically. And Strawn, interesting, very interesting young player there as well. Desmond Patton kicking around. So you've got repeatability. If injuries strike wide receivers like they've struck everywhere else, you've got guys that can play behind your big 3.
Yes, Pascal. You love Pascal, Cecil, because this is that story that starts this summer for so many players. You make it as a special teamer. You make it by showing the team that you'll do the dirty work. You'll do the odd jobs. And then eventually, with injuries, maybe you'll get an opportunity to show them you can do more. Pascal's done that. And he got a decent RFA contract from them. He's going to play. He's going to catch 25, 30, 35 balls, even if no one gets hurt. If someone gets hurt, there's something there. And then, as you mentioned, they have a type. Can you tell that Chris Ballard's looking for a big receiver with speed?
Right. And Strawn was a track star in college as well. So legitimate track guy that can play ball, not just a track guy that, runs himself open.
So you got small school Ashton Doolin. You got Desmond Patman, who they took in the draft last year out of Washington State. And now you have Strawn. Strawn is getting a lot of headlines in training camp, or at the very least, a lot of the footnotes that say, by the way, Strawn had another good day. So I think Strawn is your deep dynasty stash. Strawn is your preseason DFS guy to watch. Strawn is playing his way into a roster spot, likely at the extent of Patman and Doolin. And then you also have Harris, D'Anthony Harris, I think D'Anthony, who's speaking about Harris, like a Deontay Harris, or a player, a water bug, a return specialist, the jet sweep. That thing I keep saying, Cecil, you got to have somebody on the roster that can force them to honor the jet sweep. Maybe Paris Campbell can do that, but certainly Harris can do that too.
Yeah, the Indianapolis Colts have interesting tight ends, and there has been a drumbeat about Kylan Granson. Now you're noticing how I'm skipping over Jack Doyle and really kind of Mo Alley Cox as well.
Yeah.
Is he going to stay healthy? Is he going to do anything? Granson is the player, though. Like, as odd as it may seem for some out there, like, this is the player to focus on, even if it is a tight end by committee, something like that. Like, we can talk Doyle, Alley Cox, of course, but Kylan Granson has been the player that the drumbeat has been most consistent about throughout the entire offseason.
Yeah, and DeMichael Harris. Sorry. I always have to feel terrible when I do that. So 3 tight ends. What do you have when you have 3 tight ends that play 0 fantasy relevant tight ends? But don't close your mind to Kylan Granson eventually. And look, I love Mo Alley Cox. He's the last player on my dynasty roster, so we can come up with a name for this. That player that's like, when I have an open spot, I put Mo Alley Cox in that spot. He barely fits because he's so big. And then when I have to cut somebody, I come back to, well, is he really going to hit? What are the real chances that he's going to hit? Probably not. So I release him, and then I bring him back because I get an open spot because someone goes on IR. He's a basketball convert. He's massive. He has natural ball skills, huge mitts. He's big, and he runs well after the catch. Kind of fearsome. I don't think he knows how to initiate contact when collisions yet, but that's the basketball convert in him. I just think that there's no way that he's going to get a consistent targets. He may have a week here and there. Again, best ball. He may have a 50, 60-yard catch. He may have a week where he has 1 or 2 touchdowns, or he may lead this tight end group in touchdowns. Kylan Granson, you have to watch for the long haul. Playmaker, pure receiving tight end, fitting into that Trey Burton role right away. But over time, Mo Alley Cox already had a little knee thing flare up. This is the thing with Mo Alley Cox, like you said, can he stay healthy? Can he generate that momentum? So if Alley Cox has more serious injury issues, now Granson becomes more interesting. Wentz loves to throw to the tight end. Reich loves to scheme to the tight end. And then you have Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle. I can't do it, Cease. He's your dirty work guy. And he will catch a few touchdowns, and he will get a few targets, and he will make it difficult to count on any of these tight ends. He's not going to have value of his own, but they're very tactically important to this team. And I think Granson is the guy that, he's not going to remind us of Dallas Clark, okay? But maybe he could remind us of, was there one good year that Trey Burton had? I don't know.
Daniels?
Good one. There you go. Thank you, Owen Daniels. There's a happy Texans memory for you.
Yeah. See, it's all about happy times. Happy times when I saw Jordan Thomas down at the Shrine game when he was listed as a wide receiver. I was like, that big guy is not a wide receiver. He's a tight end. It's preseason watch list. I've had a man crush on Jordan Thomas since I saw him coming out of Mississippi State.
Yeah, he bounced around the league. And I don't know if that there's much there, but you can see the value this team puts on tight end. And he has more of a chance of being relevant there than he did back in Houston.
It is the Audible, the preseason watch list, 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about. We talk about right here on this show as we continue rolling on. Oh, Urban Meyer, what are you doing? What are you doing? Buddy's got Trevor Lawrence and a wide receiver that everyone needs to roster. I'm serious. We'll tell you about him and why next. Any singing in this break?
I don't know. I like to sing. Singing's good. It's good for you, Singing and dancing, Cease. If I could make one general proclamation to everybody, and it's okay if you're self-conscious. It's okay if you only sing in the shower. It's okay if you only dance while you're by yourself. But do it. Do it. Because it makes you feel better. It lightens the mood. It unburdens things, Remember the old John Belushi? When he outlives everybody in the old Saturday Night Live black and white thing.
Okay.
And you ever see this old Saturday Night Live? And he goes and he dances on their graves because he's the reason I outlived them all is because I'm a dancer.
He's a dancer.
Of course, he didn't actually. The John Belushi documentary is really sad.
I'll tell you what's really good. I don't know what's really good. Anyway.
See, so Freddie wants me to sing Far Side. Can't keep running away. Is that some Far Side? That's some Jay Dilla. Rest in peace. Oh,
It's been a tough one, man.
there's always a tough one. We lost a great, Cease, since you're in radio, I'll tell you, WWOZ, we listen to it all the time. So the DJs here, they always curate their own shows. So when you're really with them for a couple of hours in a very personal way. And we just lost another one, Action Jackson. He was 59. He died after cancer. He was the one he would always say, "It's your boy, Action Jackson." And he would tell you where the second line was coming up that Sunday. And he had a great show. And so, yeah, man, the way that radio and voices can be parts of our lives. But at the same time, we always want to make sure to recognize that loss, but also recognize that it's a loss because of what they added to our lives.
Right. Okay, Jacksonville, let's get ready to go. In 3, 2, 1. He is the ultimate can't miss prospect, and that is Trevor Lawrence. But with Urban Meyer running the show, how much does Trevor Lawrence hit for fantasy GMs, Bloom?
Yeah, that's really tough. That's really, really tough to gauge because you have a team that will likely try to run the ball a lot under Urban Meyer, and you have the personnel with James Robinson and Travis Etienne to do it. Will they have the game scripts with that defense? That I don't know about. Trevor Lawrence could be a hit for fantasy. He's a great athlete. He's a fearless runner. Now, again, complications. Will Tim Tebow make the team? Will Tim Tebow be that Taysom Hill who comes into the goal line and takes away the chances that Lawrence would have to score touchdowns as a short yardage runner? I don't know. Will Urban Meyer... See, there's a whole overarching theme to this because big unknown with Urban Meyer. Although you can say, well, there's a known. There's what he did back at Ohio State, right? There's what he did at Utah, what he did at Florida. Well, if we're looking at that, that's not comforting for Trevor Lawrence's fantasy value. Now, is Urban Meyer so single-minded? This comes back to Tebow. This comes back to Travis Etienne. This comes back to what the offense is going to be like. Is he just going to do what he's done in college and think that's good enough? That's going to work.
Yep.
And then if that doesn't work, will he adapt? Will he evolve?
Nope.
That's the thing. This H-back position he likes and so on. You're right. So that's really why this team is so difficult to project. Will Travis Etienne really be the Curtis Samuel, Percy Harvin of this team, which actually gives James Robinson a nice path to value, and Etienne for that matter, because if he catches 70, 80 balls, if he catches 70 or 80 balls, what does that mean for the 3 excellent wide receivers, really 4 excellent wide receivers? How do those numbers get chopped up? Does this become a situation again, like we just talked about in Indy, where there's quality players at wide receiver, but nobody you can count on a week-to-week basis because they trade off big weeks? There's so many moving parts here. It's going to be interesting. Again, I want to take a step back and say Shad Khan got his guy. You can say that was not the guy to go after. He's not worth all the money. But he went and got his guy. So Jacksonville actually did something that made us say they're not the Weekend at Bernie's franchise. Urban Meyer is very much alive. He's very much not Bernie. He's not somebody that is a corpse that is being animated to make it seem like this team is trying to be competitive. They're giving Urban Meyer he's got Trent Baalke. So it's really Urban Meyer. He's a coach king.
Yeah.
So we'll get to see what he does. It's going to be interesting. It could be really frustrating for fantasy. But then again, if you can get in the head of Urban Meyer and figure this out, and maybe Trevor Lawrence can be part of that, because I think if we can look at the fantasy numbers of these quarterbacks in Urban Meyer offenses, they can be very good. Now, as a Jags fan, you might say, I don't want Trevor Lawrence being exposed to hits 80 or 100 times, 4 or 5 times a game, because he doesn't have any regard for his own health in a good way, like Joe Burrow, right? He doesn't think about self-preservation. It's the NFL. You have to. So Urban Meyer may be setting Lawrence up to fail. In closing, I'll just say this. I would rather take Trey Lance or Justin Fields than Trevor Lawrence, even though I don't know when they're going to start, and I know Lawrence is going to start week 1.
And Lawrence is going to start week 1 and dazzle you with that arm. He also reminds me, in terms of the no regard bloom, of Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson did the same thing in college, right? That Trevor Lawrence did in college, where it's like, I'm just going to take this big hit and deliver the ball 80 yards downfield, and we're going to score, and you're going to suck. And like, that's what he does. But in the NFL, it's a different animal. It's a different thing. And behind Trevor Lawrence doesn't even matter. I mean, I guess it matters to see if Gardner Minshew goes somewhere, right? If someone trades. The Colts, I know people have put that together. It's like they don't trade within their own division, but okay, Gardner Minshew's there. Keep an eye on that.
Right. Because he could end up on another team. And that's the thing. Also, I haven't mentioned Darrell Bevell yet. Maybe that's Freudian, right? Because I keep thinking this is Urban Meyer's team, Urban Meyer's offense. Darrell Bevell is there, and he has some experience running pro offenses. So, and I think about this Cease right now because I think about Minshew. Has Minshew even really had a fair chance to show what he can do in the NFL? No. So preseason, maybe this is a chance for them to show off Minshew for a team that could be looking for a quarterback later in the season, or maybe a team that wants a quarterback right now. So again, this team actually has come back to life. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I do know it will make me pay closer attention to Gardner Minshew because I feel like it's a better opportunity to see what he really has.
Well, here's the thing about Jacksonville that you can praise, and I'll turn it into a Broncos show for the first time in 50 minutes, but like, they have a plan. I don't care if you agree with that plan or not, or Urban Meyer sucks or whatever you think. Like, they have their plan, and there's something of note with that, like where you have to admire it and be like, well, I wouldn't hire Urban Meyer, but they wanted that. They got it. They have Trevor Lawrence. They have great skill position players, and they have now a running back situation that could be frustrating for fantasy GMs because it should be James Robinson left, James Robinson right. But Travis Etienne is too good to just sit on the bench or relegate to a part-time role. So 50-50, 60-40, what is the split here? Because we know a split is happening in the backfield.
It's very difficult to see because, Cease, on one hand, you have good old rational coaching. Good old rational coaching is you want to run the ball? Give it to James Robinson a lot. It could be 250 carries, maybe not the same fantasy values last year, but a value at the 7th, 8th round. And I'll give the fantasy hive mind credit because they put James Robinson right at where it's very tough to consider whether to take him or not. If he's 5th, 6th round pick, if we're really projecting him to be closer to last year's numbers, I'm passing.
Was he a Rolaids pick for you?
I should have put him in there. I should have put him in there. And maybe the fact that he's not in there is a sign that I'm not considering him enough. Because the Rolaids pick is the guy that really, it's difficult when you're on the clock. It's a struggle.
Right. Jonathan Taylor, it's a struggle.
Right, it's a struggle. So based on Urban Meyer's MO, that could really amplify the value of James Robinson, right? I mean, they bring in Carlos Hyde, he's the number 3 back. But James Robinson can do all those things and be better. And James Robinson, remember, is a good receiver out of the backfield too. And again, rational coaching or not, Travis Etienne, he wanted Kadarius Toney in the first round. So Travis Etienne is, from all reports, being worked up as a receiver, which apparently he's been improving and doing better, running routes and doing those things. And it's that Curtis Samuel, Percy Harvin role. So there's your path. Hey, if James Robinson's the goal line back, if James Robinson's the short yardage 3rd down back, if James Robinson is the early down back whenever the games are still competitive, then he can return value on that 7th, 8th round pick. Maybe he's a matchup play, but he's a play nonetheless. And the whole time, Travis Etienne is still catching 5, 6 balls in good games, 3, 4 in games where is more his floor, and getting some touches out in space and doing some things that show off his speed. Maybe they can both have value. Maybe they can even both be hits at ADP. Maybe there's even a strategy where you take Etienne and Robinson in your draft because Meyer, much to the chagrin of anybody who likes Trevor Lawrence and fantasy leagues with his receivers, is going to run this offense through the backfield, not through the air show. So it's there, Cease. But at the end of every single one of these takes, I have to say, maybe, I don't know, let's see. Because it's so difficult to gauge with the tension between Urban Meyer wanting to do what Urban Meyer always does and the actual talents and the actual way things play out in the NFL and whether he'll learn from that. But maybe in this case, the two intersect. Urban Meyer doing what Urban Meyer wants to do, which is have this H-back role, put Travis Etienne in it, opens up James Robinson have value. So I'm coming around on these backs, both of them, although I still probably want Trey Sermon or Javonte Williams. And see, this is where you can come in because you got insight here. Would you rather have Javonte Williams or Travis Etienne?
Javonte.
So preview, it's a Denver show again.
It is a Broncos show. And here's the thing that makes James Robinson even shakier, Bloom, like the Carlos Hyde factor, like the trust factor. let's say Robinson goes out there and, it's a bad day, 2 yards of carry or whatever, or fumbles a rock or what have you. Urban Meyer can just go to Carlos and be like, well, you're my guy. And then you look at the guys behind him. Daryl Ngambowale has talent. Divine Ozigbo is a player we've talked about for years on the preseason watch list. Like, just give him a shot. And it used to be with the Saints and now here with Jacksonville for the past couple of seasons. So it's been a minute, but it's preseason watch list, and they've got talent behind their big two at running back.
They do. We never got to see what Ozigbo could really do. Robinson eclipsed him. Hyde is, again, isn't this just Carlos Hyde? Maybe the name for this player is Carlos Hyde, the player who doesn't create fantasy value of his own, but is inconveniently placed to keep fantasy value from blossoming in others. Maybe that could be his role in this backfield. Yet again, we know, the backfield's going to be important to this offense. That's why they're 3 deep, and they still have some good players beyond the top 3.
Bloom, have you ever heard that there's 2 types of people, fountains and drains, right? And, Carlos Hyde, it's not a fountain. He's a drain. He's a drain on your fantasy team, but Urban Meyer loves him. I'll tell you what you'll love is Fan Up, where you can just be fans. Download the Fan Up app. It's the app everyone is talking about. Fan Up on the App Store for Apple. Must be 18 years or older to play. Restrictions apply per state. Fan Up crowning their first ever MVF Most Valuable Fan this season. Will it be you? Join an awesome community of over 50,000 fantasy and esports fans who love to compete against each other and team up as friends for the ultimate prizes and, of course, the ultimate bragging rights. Fan Up. Simply pick your starting 7 players every week of the NFL regular season. Your flex player has 1.5 points multiplier, hence the contest title, Flex Frenzy. Get in on the frenzy yourself. Download that Fan Up app now. Fan Up and just be fans. Just talk about DJ Chark, Marvin Jones. I want to fast forward to Laviska Shenault, Bloom. Now, this is not an investing show, although would that be podcast number 8,768?
I would listen to your investment show.
Okay, everyone get Ethereum if you don't already have it, and if you do, hold till next year. Like, that's a year hold. I'm big on NFTs still. I got a buddy of mine that owns a Snoop Dogg song.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called Diamond Joint. You'll be so shocked, Bloom. It's about the devil's lettuce. Anyway, it's a pretty good song. And then cards have gone crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you see the comic books behind me and stuff. Like, comics have gone crazy enough, but cards are like stupid crazy. And every card show or comic book show as I go around promoting my independent comic Gravis, I tell people, like, go get your Laviska Shenault rookie cards, because when he hits, he's going to hit. Now, he may not hit for very long, hit and then sell, okay? Because with Laviska, we know, like, okay, that injury bug's still there. It's always there with Visca. But when he hits, dude, it's going to be huge. So Chark has excitement. Marvin Jones is a pro's pro. But Visca is the one with the drumbeat, the excitement, and that upside. That is crazy.
Yeah.
He's the one that gets me excited in this group.
That was a beautiful transition. And this was your investing minute with Cecil Lammey.
Bing. I'm not a professional.
No. For entertainment purposes only, just like our fantasy advice, right?
Right.
So we have to handle these 3 receivers together. But I'm glad you led with Visca. And Cease, with each one of these receivers, we can say the classic, we should have known, right? Visca should be in that H-back role, at least some. He has the skill set for it. They didn't need to draft Travis Etienne to do that. But Visca can also play outside receiver. He's not just a gadget player. He, especially in the offseason, looks like a player who's ready to break out. So if he hits, we should have known. But if the targets between these 3 get split up, if Visca is not used as much as he should because so many plays that could be going to him are going to Travis Etienne, we should have known. Next up, DJ Chark. DJ Chark looked magnificent 2 years ago. A burgeoning breakout player in the NFL. Deep speed, ball skills, body control, everything is coming together. Last year, up and down. Now, again, how much can we... He was doing that for the first 10 weeks or so of 2019 on a bad team going nowhere. Last year on a bad team going nowhere, well, he went nowhere. So with a good quarterback, finally, should we be shocked if he breaks out? No, we should see it coming. However, Urban Meyer said he was a big receiver that played small, and now he's got a break in his hand, which isn't a big deal. He's going to miss practice, though. He's going to miss ramp up with Lawrence. He's going to miss some preseason. He should be ready for week 1. We'll see. So if Chark is just a worthless pick, if Meyer kind of freezes him out, just keeps up with the Urban Meyer offense. Remember, what did deep receivers do in Urban Meyer offenses? Not much. So if he's a wasted pick, we should have known. Marvin Jones, reunited with Darrell Bevell. He's producing through hell and high water with the Lions. So he's kind of the coach / wide receiver 1 outside, right? And Trevor Lawrence, again, a good quarterback. Look what he did with the Clemson receivers. If Jones hits as the cheapest of these 3, we should have known. He's also in his 30s. He's also on the downslope of his career. This team might not throw a lot downfield. If he's a wasted pick, we should have known. You sense the theme here with the Jags. It's going to be interesting.
Kenny Loggins, man. Should have known better than to fall in love with you.
I just want to say, I'm all right.
Okay.
Nobody worry about. Or this is it. It's draft. That's for your draft.
That is for your draft. Sorry to interrupt. You just had a Kenny Loggins vibe about you, man.
I love it. Kenny.
Yacht Rock. Where's your scarf? Right? It's the
summertime.
Schooner, right?
Mm-hmm. I did sail on with the in the intermission. There's that Thundercat song with Kenny Loggins. Don't forget. That's a really good one. And Michael McDonald.
Mm-hmm. Yamo be there.
Yes.
Yamo be there to watch the Jaguars backup receivers, including Laquan Treadwell, that big hype video. I always love the hype video when they're, and he wasn't throwing to air, but still, it was like 1-on-1s or whatever, 7-on-7 maybe. And Trevor Lawrence like rolls out, hair's flowing. He stops, sets his feet, fires it across the field, and there's Laquan Treadwell making a play. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh my God, if he revives and resuscitates Laquan Treadwell's career, Trevor Lawrence is Jesus. No offense. But yeah, if he resuscitates that guy, like he's got some magical healing powers.
Yeah. What did Urban Meyer say about Treadwell? Remember him from high school. So you can't write this stuff. Really interesting guys here. First and foremost, Colin Johnson, the big receiver from Texas who last year showed that maybe the league faded him too quickly because he could have been a second-day pick 2 years ago. Did not have a good year going into last year, I think a 5th-round pick, but showed that he's got the big frame, but he's skilled and he's fast enough. Now with DJ Chark out, he's going to get a chance to run with the top 3. Definitely a guy with the dynasty future you want to stash away. They have Philip Dorsett. There's your straight vertical speed receiver. Maybe he has a role. They have Jamal Agnew, who they signed as a wide receiver and gave decent money. Again, does this sound like Urban Meyer is going to be using players in this college offense fashion? Yes. But how's this going to affect snaps? How's it going to affect targets? I don't know. And then they even have beyond that, Jalen Camp. Stop me if you heard this one before, Cease. A Georgia Tech receiver who's got size and speed, who didn't necessarily get used a lot, showed he has a lot more in the pros.
Hey.
That's Jalen Camp. Now, you have to wait. They even have Josh Imatorbhebhe. And I got to mention him, Cease, because Lance Zierlein said the most explosive leaper he has ever evaluated. Ever. That's a long ever if you're Lance Zierlein. So I got to mention this. They got a lot of interesting names here.
They do. And then they've got tight ends.
Tim Tebow.
Yeah. So Chris Manhertz, James O'Shaughnessy, Luke Farrell, Tim Tebow.
Yep.
All right. I'm not going to be rostering any of these guys.
Right. That's that. And maybe Tim Tebow will have some goal line touches. I don't know. We'll see if he even makes the team. Nobody even thought he would ever be back in the NFL. Chris Manhertz, your classic blocking tight end. Luke Farrell, more of a blocking tight end. I think Justin Fields made a few good throws to him last year. And then O'Shaughnessy, who's a good receiver, former Rat Waldman favorite. So, you piece all these guys together. If there's an argument to go with one of these receivers with one of your picks, it's because the tight ends are not going to play a role. So even if Travis Etienne does get a ton of targets, there's still some targets for the taking because this is not going to be a tight end friendly offense.
It is the Audible, the preseason watch list. We're going through the AFC South today. It's 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about. Why the Titans added Julio Jones and Ryan Tannehill's numbers could go down. That's next. They are to the T's, Bloom.
I love yacht rock. You know, they have some yacht rock rides on Peloton. I do them a lot. Yacht rock is kind of my happy place. You know, I love me some Steely Dan.
It never made a comeback. Like everything comebacks are.
Well, it kind of did though. I mean, Thundercat embraced yacht rock. I think that you have artists out there like, who am I thinking of here? Oh God, I'm trying to go deep. I'm forgetting his name now though. Oh, my brain is just everything is taken up by football right now. There are yacht rock influenced artists right now that are making yacht rock cool again. But yacht rock, I called it backseat music, Cease, because it was music we heard when we were in the backseat of our parents' cars in the 70s. Like the back seats that you could stretch your legs all the way out and not hit the front seat, you know?
Right. Okay.
And
that's what you're talking about. I was thinking of something else. But anyway.
No, that's more like what Led Zeppelin.
I was like 70s. You're not that old, baby.
Right. That's like Foreigner or something. But yacht rock, it takes me back to that carefree, weightless place when you're like 3 or 4 years old when I hear yacht rock songs. And so many yacht rock songs. Let me say this also. I could probably go on way too long about yacht rock. A lot of them are really sweet love songs. Like really tender, sweet love songs.
Yeah, it's not creepy like hair metal.
No. Yeah, right. Like, it may break hair metal. It's like we might be breaking some laws or you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's yacht rock is like uplifting, happy music about happy things, and I like yacht rock. We could do a yacht rock karaoke special, and that probably would get me very excited.
Okay, all right, it gets me excited talking about the Titans. But let's go on in 3, 2, 1. What does Ryan Tannehill do for an encore this season with the Titans with Julio Jones, and why that encore may not be your favorite song, Bloom?
Well, I'll say this. Sorry. I was trying to think what's favorite song you're talking about. I thought that was a riddle for a second.
Have you ever been to a concert and like they don't finish with the favorite song? I just saw Garth Brooks, at Shine Frontier Days.
Mm-hmm.
And such wild success. Thank you all for supporting me in my Shine Frontier Days campaign. Garth didn't finish with Friends in Low Places.
Right.
And I was like, what? Like that's the closer, baby.
You send him out on a high note.
He didn't finish with that.
Right.
So like your encore, this is what I feel about Ryan Tannehill. He's already played Friends in Low Places.
Mm-hmm.
And so they bring out Julio Jones, right? Hey, let's bring out Blake Shelton, Gwen Stefani. And then it's like a song that it's not as good as the one you just did.
Yeah.
So is that how you feel about Ryan?
No.
I think it's dangerous with Ryan Tannehill and thinking no Arthur Smith.
Right.
Okay?
So that's the biggest question.
Baby.
That's the biggest question. If you want to fade this Titans offense, you do because you say Arthur Smith's play calling and play design was much more important than we realize. Again, offensive genius, maybe because he just used what he had. Will Todd Downing do that? Hopefully he has a directive. Maybe they just give him the Arthur Smith playbook and just say, here's your playbook. You're not making
Is that the way it works with the egos in the front office? The egos on the field are one thing. The egos in the front office are much larger.
It is.
So you're going to, hey, that old guy, it'd be like telling your new lover, like, just do what she did or he did or whatever. Is that going to work?
Is that going to work? I don't know.
Seriously.
I don't know. Let's hope they have a very straightforward approach to this offense, because the glass half empty take is maybe Arthur Smith was more important than we realize. But the glass half full take is this. We've never seen what this Titans offense can do when they have that triple bind of A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, and Derrick Henry. And when the trade happened, some really good football minds, I don't remember who it was. I don't know if it was Louis Riddick or not, Cease. I can't wait until he's a GM, by the way. Saying basically, here are your choices. Fine, put 8 in the box. Now you have Julio Jones and A.J. Brown one-on-one. Good luck. Okay, safety help over the top for A.J. Brown. Now you have Julio Jones one-on-one. Do it for Julio Jones. Now you have Brown one-on-one. Go with a light box, play 2 high safeties. Now you have like 6 in the box for Derrick Henry. Good luck with that. There is no right answer as long as Jones, Brown, and Henry can stay on the field. There is no right answer. Go ahead.
That's the big thing. That's the big key. And also comes down to Ryan Tannehill, like actually continuing to flourish again, or did he peak? Usually you and I look at it and be like, we haven't seen the peak. I've seen Tannehill. I've seen him at his best. Julio's never healthy. And if you take Derrick Henry out of this equation, you're screwed.
That's true. I mean, it's fragile. And that's the thing is Julio has to stay on the field because 3 is almost impossible, but 2 you can handle. So Tannehill, that being said, if it works out, if Julio can stay on the field, he's set up for his best fantasy season yet. He's hyper efficient as it is. That's one of the things you have to be so impressed with Ryan Tannehill, by the way. Cease, if there is the classic most underrated quarterback, Ryan Tannehill's a great answer. He's a great answer because he executes so consistently. He's the kind of quarterback, Cease, when you watch Titans games now, when the ball leaves Tannehill's hand, you just expect it to be on target to a receiver on the other end of that throw, right? He's gotten to that point in his game because he's making the most out of low opportunity. And I guess that makes more margin of error for fantasy. So that's why he's below Stafford and Brady, the quarterbacks in that tier. But he continues to show that he can perform with quarterbacks in that tier. And the Titans defense probably not getting that much better. Maybe, Bud Dupree, Caleb Farley's at least on the field. You're trying to help out that secondary. They get Janoris Jenkins. So there's some reason for hope if they can have that second pincher with Harold Landry, if they have the defense to not get them into these shootouts, because the run defense also was not good, then that also hurts Tannehill to an extent. But Cease, whatever they get from Tannehill, we better hope that Tannehill stays healthy, especially for Titans fans, because this is one of the ugliest backup situations in the league.
They just signed Matt Barkley to compete with Logan Woodside.
Yes.
That's
all we
true
really need.
sentence.
Deshaun Kaiser, we barely knew you.
Right. A mix of Tom Brady, what did he say? Tom Brady and Cam Newton?
Yeah.
What was Deshaun? Like, I love the confidence, kid, but reality is calling for you.
In a career that didn't last as long as Bruce Bradkowski's.
Bruce, a nice guy. Still works for PFF, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk about King Henry. And remember the years, Bloom, and it actually wasn't that long ago, where Henry'd get going about week 8 because they wouldn't really use him. And then week 8, he'd have 1,000 yards over the final 8 games of the season.
Right.
It's like now we've seen full Derrick Henry. So have we ever seen a 2-time 2,000-yard rusher? Could Henry be that guy? Like, sure.
Yeah, prepare yourselves. Because again, if Julio Jones can stay on the field, now you have the easiest situation for Derrick Henry to date. Maybe they'll scale back his workload a little bit. But that's the other question here with Henry, right? Okay, we're going back to the rule of 370 those days where he's had a massive workload each of the last 2 years. Can he do it again? Number one, he was built like a guy who can do it. It's really not fair to compare him to other backs that aren't built like him and what other backs have been built like him as far as durability. He is dispensing punishment more than he's absorbing it. It's just that simple. Second, because of the way they frustratingly only started to unleash him as the season went on, he still has a lot of tread left on the tires. I'm not worried about Derrick Henry. I think that if you have the number 3 pick, you have a choice between Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, who could catch 120 or 130 balls this year, really is more like a receiver than a running back at this point, or Ezekiel Elliott, if you hope everything comes around with Dallas's offense. The touchdowns will be there. Or I guess you could really make a left turn and go with Devontae Adams or even Travis Kelce if you say, I'm running back. Even those questions are too much for me. But I think it's going to be exciting to see what Henry can do as long as Julio stays on the field. And again, Cease, there is not an obvious guy. If Henry were to go down, if the folks that are fading him because of his workload the last 2 years are right in a way that this is where some injury, a multi-week injury happens, I'm not sure who we're going to be recommending to pick up on the waiver wire show.
Yeah, because behind him, I love Brian Hill, but he's been featured before due to injury and hasn't done what he should have done. So better as a part-time guy, all-around guy. Jeremy McNichols kicks around, right? Special teams, can do it all. Darrington Evans, is he running back or is he a wide receiver? Like, where are they using him now? So it's interesting. Preseason watch list. We'll see how these guys shape out.
Right. Darrington Evans is the guy they spent a 3rd-round pick on, I think. And he does have speed. But if Derrick Henry misses time, you don't just plug Evans in to Henry's role. He's not an inside runner. And you don't change the offense. You're not just going to reinvent this offense because Henry's out. You have Brian Hill, and if we're going to say something nice about Brian Hill, it's that he gets downhill in a hurry and he hits the hole hard. Isn't that really what they want out of their running back if Henry goes down? Or Jeremy McNichols, who they know. So we'll watch this Hill versus McNichols battle because I suspect that if Henry were to go down, people are going to rush to pick up Evans. But it's actually whoever out of Hill and McNichols that makes the team. That's the player you're going to want.
I'll tell you what you want. The Fan Up app. Download the app. Everyone's talking about Fan Up on the App Store for Apple. Must be 18 years or older to play. Restrictions apply per state. Fan Up and just be fans. And wow. Fan Up. Simply pick your starting 7 players every week of the NFL regular season. Your flex player has 1.5 times points multiplier. Hence the contest title, Flex Frenzy. Get your flex on with Fan Up. Download that app in your app store. It's Fan Up and just be fans. Well, just be fans of A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, 2 of the best to play. And Jones going to get a gold jacket one day. A.J. Brown's on that track as well. And, well, it's what has you excited about Tennessee.
Yeah, it's very exciting, especially A.J. Brown. And I don't even think it's too far to say taking A.J. Brown late in the first round. I'm not going to say that's a terrible move. I'm not going to say you're crazy if you do that because he did what he did last year with 2 banged up knees. He had 2 knee surgeries. Everything's fine with knee surgery.
And he missed 2 games.
Yeah, and he was in a lot of pain. I think I say this a few times a year, Cecil, at least. Some NFL players experience regular pain. Like just it's 11:31 on a Tuesday. This is how I feel. That we would not be able to bear. Like if we could have traded bodies with A.J. Brown during the season last year and understood the pain he was playing with in his knees, then we would understand that we could get a lot. In addition, going into that magical third year, we can get a lot better A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown could really assert his dominance this year, especially Corey Davis. I don't take anything away from him, but Julio Jones on the other side. So again, second round running backs. This is where you're going to make your money in your fantasy leagues. Mixon versus Najee Harris versus Gibson. Maybe the answer is A.J. Brown. Maybe the answer is just don't mess around with the risk factors there, even though there's upside too, and just go with A.J. Brown. Julio Jones is on the all-roll aids team because on one hand, Julio Jones was a perennial first and second round fantasy pick. Even though he won't get the volume he got in Atlanta, he will still get plenty of volume. This is a very narrow offense. And we'll talk about Anthony Ferguson. This is a narrow offense. This is a 3-man offense. NBA style, baby. 3 men. On every play, 95% of the time, Henry, Jones, or Brown should be touching the ball. I know that's not going to actually be the percentage, but that's what it should be. So Julio Jones is going to get enough volume, and perhaps because he won't have as much attention, because he's not the guy that we're worried about playing without one of the other 2. He's the one that we're worried about, right? Julio Jones out there with a healthy Brown, with a healthy Henry could be a lot of fun. And he's a perennial first or second round pick you get in the 4th round. So the Fantasy Hive mind has discounted Julio Jones a lot this year. Wide receiver changing teams, et cetera, et cetera. But, Cease, how many times have we seen this story? Iconic signature player for a franchise. Team, now, the part of this that would make you pro Jones is the Falcons didn't want to trade Julio Jones. They had to. They had to balance the books this year.
Right.
So it wasn't like they looked at Julio Jones and said, he's just not worth it anymore. It was just the only move they could make and make the cap work out this year, sign their rookies, etc. Unless they were going to do something like give Grady Jarrett a big extension that is not something they wanted to do, or restructure more contracts, putting that off into the future, which they already had done some anyway. They didn't want to do that. But on the other side, what did we see from Julio last year? He's always been on the injury report. He's already been always nicked up, playing through it, producing through it. Not last year. Last year, he couldn't do it. There was that one game against the Saints where he got back on the field for one play in the 4th quarter, made a play, and then limped off and couldn't play for the rest of the game. Maybe that's the aberration. Maybe it was just a particularly severe hamstring injury. He came back a little bit too early, and that's what ruined his season. Or maybe he's just on the other side of that peak, and now he's in decline. And we've seen this story too much. Again, with the we should have known. If Julio Jones plays, as you already alluded to, Cease, if Julio Jones can't stay on the field this year, if he's frustrating because he misses 4 games, 3 other games he leaves early, 2 other games he's a game-time decision, we don't know whether we can play him, we should have seen it coming. And that could, in turn, make you think about Henry and Brown a little bit differently, but at the same time, if Julio Jones plays 17 games this year, everybody who takes him at his ADP will be very happy.
You'll be very rewarded. What about a limited role, Bloom? He's never been a red zone guy. He has had 10 touchdowns once in his career. So if he's a little bit banged up, would they be creative enough and to say, like, hey, you're kind of a decoy. Brown's going to do the heavy lifting, but when you get to pay dirt, maybe Julio sees a jump. What's he have? 9 touchdowns over the last 2 years?
Right.
Maybe this year he has 9. This season gets close to that 10 mark again.
Yeah, it's fascinating the way that Atlanta and Tennessee are intertwined forever now due to this. It's not just Julio. It's because Arthur Smith is now the head coach in Atlanta. So what if the problem with Julio Jones in red zone was the play calling and Arthur Smith fixes that in Atlanta? Kyle Pitts. The answer is Kyle Pitts. What if Julio Jones in Tennessee can make things happen in the red zone? All of these questions intertwined is what makes it so interesting to pay such close attention to the NFL.
Now, there's a lot of teams that have very interesting reserve receivers, and it's not like Josh Reynolds is a slappy. But here, it's like when Fred Brown is the name that jumps out, or Chester Rogers, you're like, oof, I hope Julio stays healthy because their cupboard's kind of bare behind him.
Yeah, Reynolds was, until that trade, in line to be the number 2 receiver. Build up speed, has some downfield game, but it's not like if Julio goes down, we're going to say go pick up Reynolds. I don't think so. And you can go down. Des Fitzpatrick, a downfield receiver, actually played, I think, at a higher yards per catch at Louisville. Got to say that the right way. Give it its time. Than Tutu Atwell. I think he had a higher yards per catch than Tutu Atwell. You have, and he's got size. Marcus Johnson, some track speed, and you have some holdovers. Guys like Cameron Batson, Nick Westbrook Akina, who at least the team knows what they can do in known quantity. But yeah, this is a 3-man offense for good reason, not just because the 3 are so good, but because they don't really have anybody else that should challenge them for touches.
Yeah, it is. You said NBA. I'll say it's more like big 3, right? It's like big 3. Just go out there and do your thing. Play the 3-man game. It's a little T game.
Yeah.
What about the tight end? We had a chat earlier. I'll try to find it about Anthony Ferkser and what does he do this year? Here it is from our guy Sean. Hey, Sean. Do you guys think Anthony Ferkser has a decent fantasy season? Okay, well, let's discuss it, especially because those reserve wide receivers aren't that interesting.
Yeah, he could. Decent. It's tight end. He could be fantasy relevant. He could be a low tight end 1. Same idea as Blake Jarwin, where he's the forgotten guy. He's the guy that the defense is going to say, well, if someone's going to beat us, it's going to be Anthony Ferkser. Makes sense. He's going to be the receiving tight end. He's not much of a blocker. He's coming around, but he's trending up. He had a good first few weeks of camp, getting some praise. Now, I still don't consider him on the level of an Irv Smith or a Blake Jarwin or Adam Troutman, some of these true upside tight ends. He's more of a guy you wait and see how he plays in that first week against Arizona, and then maybe you pick him up in week 2 if you don't like what your second tight end did, or maybe you didn't take a second tight end and realize that you need one, or you just want to make the most of that last roster spot. Harvard, always like to mention that. And he's been productive in a small role. Not productive and explosive like Blake Jarwin, but a very consistent executor. But Cecil, on the other hand, maybe he's Jacob Hollister in the sense that, that's what he can do. That's all he can do. We've seen what he can do, and he's not really going to have his value grow, even though Johnny Smith left is going to give him a larger role. I think I liked Ferkser more before the Julio signing, that a trade. That being said, if Julio can't stay healthy, then that points back to Ferkser as what they can do with this pass offense to give some other threat than the big 3.
That is a wrap for the Tennessee Titans episode here on the preseason watch list. Also wrapping up the AFC South. He is Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. The show's at the Audible, and I'm at Cecil Lammey. Before we're out of here, and all of our chat room people, thank you very much for reacting to us. But make sure to do all those YouTube things, like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a vid. Thank you, Sasha. He is Sigmund. I am Cecil. We are the Audible. Everyone out there, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned and stay frosty.